Hello and welcome to the Tartan Touchline, the podcast where we talk all things football with a Scottish twist. From the top tier to the grassroots, we cover the game like no one else. Fetch a scarf, grab a cuppa or a tinny, and join us for a right good gab. My name is Lauren McCulloch, and joining me as ever, my co-host Aidan Lauren. So, Aidan, it's been a couple of weeks, a lot's happened.
Yeah.
Any highlights for you? Any standouts?
Not the weekend. Not great. Good start to the weekend. Friday was, we had a bit of a road trip.
We did.
Very long day for both of us, especially you. You were effectively filming from, about 1 o'clock?
Till about
9?
10.
Half 10.
10,
So a
half
very
10.
long day for you. We drove about 200 miles. We went to all the championship stadiums. We're obviously university students at Napier and we're working on TV packages. You're doing one on the St Mirren, what is it?
The St Mirren Sleep Out, so it's the charitable foundation raising money for the homeless. So that's
good.
the 4th annual year, so it's pretty good.
And how was that?
Do you know, it was actually really insightful. Everyone was lovely, so nice, and yeah, it was absolutely freezing. Like, I woke up, I was quite happy I didn't do it. But yeah, I woke up and had to defrost my car, and all I could think about was the fact that there was like 19 people at the side of the pitch at St Mirren Park sleeping with nothing but like a sleeping bag. I was like, oh my
listen,
God.
I support these events and these causes, but you won't catch me sleeping outside unless it's for something, like, unless I physically have to do it, I guess. But I do support it. But yeah, we had a lovely road trip. So starting off in EK, I went and picked you up. Then we drove to Ayr, done a couple of clips at Ayr. But we talk about what happened when we got there.
I mean, have you got words now? Can you talk, or are you still a bit starstruck?
Do you know what? I'm really upset that I got that way because I don't think I'm someone that gets starstruck. So I don't.
Aidan, come on.
I don't think I was starstruck. I was just so, like, it was more, I couldn't believe that it happened, really. We arrived, we done a walk around the stadium just to kind of plan out what kind of clips we were going to get. It was Somerset Park down in Ayr. So we were just kind of planning, right, we'll get a clip here, we'll do a piece to camera here. And then we went back to the car to get the camera equipment for filming. And, you know, we're standing there and getting the camera equipment out, and we hear a vroom, and a Porsche driving in, and again, we think nothing of it. I mean, football players have nice cars, don't they? So then Scott Brown got out of the car, and obviously I was just a bit like,
oh my God, that's Scott Brown.
Well, he waved over and went, hiya. we were just kind of like,
no, I think you were like, I managed to get a high back. You were like, oh, like no words came out of your mouth.
I just was like, what are the I just felt like, I know he's their manager, but like, what were the chances
to be fair,
in
we were
that moment?
talking about it in the car, and then it happened. It's like we spoke it into reality.
Aye, so that was a funny moment. Just want to give a quick shout out to the people on Air. They were lovely, weren't they? Lovely people.
Really, really helpful. You know, kind of access all areas really for what you can ask for, helping us to get, you know, interviews, and yeah, they were really, really nice people.
Yeah. And their new stand, I think, is excellent, and I kind of like the blend of the old stands with the new stand in the backdrop. It kind of shows what Air are, their ambitions, but also that they remember where they've came from. I think that's quite sweet in a way.
Yeah, it is.
It was very nice. And then we went to Livy, and then we went to Falkirk. And Falkirk, we were surprised we managed to actually get pitch side, and it was great. It was just it was a funny old day, and a lot happened. As part of our TV package, we have to film a social video, and I had a crazy idea of basically, I guess, standing and doing a star jump and shouting the name of the place I was at. And we posted it on our socials for the Tartan Touchline, and I got a reply from my girlfriend that night telling me, this is very Elon Musk-esque. This is a total ick, never do this again. And I didn't realise it until I went and looked at the clips that she's talking about with Elon Musk. That is not someone I want to be compared to at this present time.
So when will you ever be star jumping outside the stadiums again?
No, I will not be doing that again. I already got a talking to. Apparently it was a complete ick It's not a word I use a lot, but it's a word that my girlfriend uses a lot. So yeah, I won't be doing that again. And then we had an anniversary dinner on Saturday. That was lovely. And then Sunday was just a bit of an anticlimax for myself, to be honest with you. And I'm recovering today.
Oh well, do you know what? We'll touch on that later.
Yes.
So why don't we move on to the results of the weekend then?
Well, yeah, I mean, with Scottish football, it's the biggest fixture in the country, and it happened yesterday. The Old Firm took place yesterday, but I think it's important to start with Rangers. Rangers got the result yesterday, but the last 10 days for Rangers have been a real positive for them.
Yeah, no, it has. I think the result against Fenerbahce, I think a lot of Rangers fans will agree, they probably rode their luck at times in the second leg, but they managed to hold out, get the game going to extra time, getting it to penalties, and then obviously winning on penalties, which is an outstanding result for them. They're in the last 8 of the Europa League. They've got an exciting tie against Bilbao coming up now. I was talking to a couple of my friends who are Rangers fans, and they were wishing they would be at home in the second leg. Obviously, a few years ago when they had that run in the Europa League, that was pretty much fully based on the fact they could bring the tie back to Ibrox and finish it there. It will be tough going to Bilbao in the second leg, but do you know what? They've beat Fenerbahce, who are a very good side. There's no reason why they can't go and compete.
Yeah, no, I think at this point, I think I'm done doubting Rangers in Europe. They seem to always prove me wrong. So I'm not even really going to make a prediction on that game because, well, on paper, to be honest with you, Bilbao are a good team. They're a really well coached team. They have some really talented players. You would expect Bilbao to go through if you're measuring it up based on talent and stuff like that. But
you would have said the same for Fenerbahce.
Exactly. So Rangers have every right to feel confident going into that tie with the run that they've been on, and also just the momentum from the last 10 days. We'll move, I guess, on to now the actual Old Firm game that took place on Sunday, or yesterday.
Yeah, yes. Long weekend.
Yeah, a long weekend for myself. But credit where credit is due. In our last episode, it was tongue in cheek. We obviously made a couple of jokes about the new coaching staff, but credit where credit is due. They played 120 minutes plus penalties on the Thursday night, and then on Sunday looked pretty fresh in that first half.
Considering they only made one change to their starting 11 as well.
No, I know. I have to. I think a lot of people will look to criticise Celtic and say, why did Celtic look like the team that were tired in the first half, or at least sluggish? No, I'm going to give credit to the fitness levels of the Rangers players and the desire in that first half. They did not look like a team that had played on Thursday night for 120 minutes plus penalties. They just didn't look like that. So credit where credit is due. Celtic fans and even Rangers fans that say, oh, these results don't matter because the assumption is that the league is over, which I think most people are in agreement with that, but no, they do matter. Yeah. It's the biggest fixture for Celtic and Rangers fans throughout the season.
No, 100%. I think everyone looks at the results of the Old Firm, but also I think going into the game, if Celtic had won that game, that would have been the first time in history that they would have won 5 Old Firm games in a row at Parkhead. Obviously, we had the return of the away fans, which obviously added to the atmosphere. I wasn't able to watch the full game, but I was listening to the first half on the radio, and the commentators were saying this has got everything. The way the game started, it's got everything to be a classic. It was set up to be a classic. We had the tackles flying in. We had a real intensity to the game, and I think that is just down to the fact you had a bit more of an atmosphere from both sides. When Rangers scored, you could hear the elation of the away fans, and I think from obviously games gone past when Rangers or Celtic have scored at either stadium, and it's just silence. That's not a game of football. Yeah. So I think it was good to get the away fans back in to just add to the atmosphere. But yeah, I think, as you said, credit where credit's due. Rangers thoroughly deserved the result. Yeah,
and I was also impressed with their tactics. Going into the game, I thought there will be some sort of, and to be fair, you saw it in the second half, Rangers starting to tire a little bit, but I'm not sure if that was necessarily Thursday night's efforts or just Celtic were pretty relentless in the second half. They knew that they were up against it, 2-0 down at half time. Celtic knew what they had to do in that second half. But their tactics, I expected Rangers to kind of adopt the tactics they did in the first leg against Fenerbahce, where they kind of sat back, sat deep, and waited for counter-attacks, which worked really well for them. They pressed really high up the pitch, and we'll go on to it. It's not a criticism. It's not like saying Celtic didn't turn up. Rangers turned up, but you could tell that Rangers knew how to get at Celtic in that first half. They knew how to kind of stop the kind of run of play. They had a really good press, and I guess we'll go on to it now. I think yesterday's game was the biggest example of how important Callum McGregor is to the cog that is the machine, the cog in the machine that is Celtic, and how they go. It's very easy to say, Callum McGregor's not really been himself the last couple of games, or he's not turned up the last couple of Old Firm games. I think he does things that people don't realise. I think he does little tiny things that are unnoticed and are unrealised, and I think it was a massive loss yesterday.
Yeah, no, I think Callum McGregor dictates the play so well. I think he makes Celtic tick. I think when he's not there, it does leave the middle of the park very exposed. Mm-hmm. He did a very similar role for Scotland. When you had McGinn, McTominay, Gilmour, but you had McGregor in that sitting role. Obviously, Gilmour's kind of adopted that role now. I think it is, as you said, a role that goes kind of under the radar. But I don't think anybody can question the leadership qualities that Callum McGregor brings and has. He holds everybody accountable. He's just always there, right place, right time. He lets the flair players, if you want to call them that, go and play and go and do their thing. He does the dirty work. He does the dirty work and makes everybody else look good. I think that's the best way to describe him. Yeah, no,
and you know what? It's simple things that I noticed in the game. There were several times in the first half that Celtic's midfield, defence or the goalkeeper would have the ball, and they were looking for someone to drop deep, receive the ball, and get the play going. And it was almost like there was a complete lack of communication, or like who was going to take up McGregor's role. No one would go, and then Rangers press would put Celtic under so much pressure that there would be sluggish passes, or it would pass right back to the opposing team. There was also times where Celtic were really not. They looked almost tired, like they didn't get going quickly. They weren't getting up the park quickly. That's where Callum McGregor kind of comes in. He sometimes goes, we need to get up the park here, guys. So I think he was a huge loss yesterday, and I think a lot of Celtic fans now see the little tiny things that McGregor does that were sadly missed yesterday.
Yeah, I think in terms of just a wee tweak that Barry Ferguson made from Thursday night, he pushed Tavernier up into the wing-back position. He played Dujon Sterling in the back line, which I think was a really smart move. I think a lot of people question Tavernier's defensive ability, so by giving him that kind of licence to go, they really managed to get the best out of him for the game, and I think that was the best option that he could have done in that game, because I do feel like if Tavernier had played in that back three, I think Celtic's front three would have got a bit more joy. And
I think this kind of five at the back system that Barry Ferguson's kind of now started to adopt, it seems to be working really well for Rangers. I thought their defence was pretty solid. The second half, I don't really think Rangers' defence can be criticised that much. Celtic were pretty desperate to get themselves back into the game, and they were playing completely differently than they did in the first half. I thought Rangers' defence was pretty solid. I think Rangers were solid all over the park, to be honest with you. And credit where credit's due, Barry Ferguson, the first Rangers manager to win his opening game in the Old Firm since, I think, Walter Smith in 1991.
Crazy. I think it was Warburton won on penalties, but it was obviously
over 90 minutes. And then I think it's the first game won at Parkhead since 2021. So that's some good stats for himself there as a manager. I guess where did it go wrong for Celtic? I think the opening goal was very poor defending. I think there were certain players that did not rise to the occasion.
Quite literally, considering Raskin won the header.
No one should be winning a header in the box. That's when Celtic's defence is fairly tall. I'm not saying really tall, but when you're maybe not necessarily against Rangers' defence, but see Rangers' attacking players, they're quite small. Raskin should not have been winning a header there, but he did. And the opening goal, I think, was very poorly defended. I can forgive the second goal. The third goal from Rangers was a well-deserving goal of, like you said, a classic against the run of play. Celtic were all over Rangers in the second half, and it came totally against the run of play, and it was a fantastic strike.
Yeah, it was a bit of individual brilliance, I think, from Aidan man.
So in terms of that, where does it leave us? You know, the argument from Celtic fans, which is, well, it was a meaningless win. There's no such thing as
How would you be celebrating if you'd won 3-2?
There's no such thing as a meaningless win in that fixture. So fair play and well done to Rangers. And it might be some of the last couple of results might be what they kind of need. Barry Ferguson was very quick to praise the character of his Rangers team that has been called into question quite a lot in the last couple of years. Fair play to them. They really turned up, and they deserved the 3 points in the end, really. I think more because they came away from home and got the result. I think, you know, like you said, a bit of individual brilliance to win the game, and it did have the hallmarks of a classic. So, yeah.
Well, I think enough of the Old Firm chat.
Yeah.
Should we move on to the other fixtures that happened in the Premiership?
Yes, I think I'd like to start at the other derby that took place. So the Dundee derby. Thoughts? As far as I'm aware, what a game.
Wow, I know. I mean, if we talk about the Old Firm being a classic, I think this
Yeah.
was even more so. Dundee going to Tannadice, winning 4-2, also had 2 goals disallowed, so they were rampant in the first half. Tony Docherty, I think, really had to have a statement result from somewhere. They'd been on a kind of terrible run. They're looking to pull themselves out of that relegation playoff place. I think Dundee United and Jim Goodwin, I think they are still in their sticky patch. Jim Goodwin came out and said that it was the worst first half performance he's seen from his side. I tend to agree with that. I think that the defence as a whole was nothing short of shambolic, to be honest, I think. But do you know what? All credit to Dundee. I thought they were on it from minute one. They pressed. They had real intent going forward. But yeah, it's an outstanding result for them.
I think it's both a bad result for Dundee United and a fantastic result for Dundee. Dundee needed that big time, and with regards to making their case for survival. And you got a sense for a while that Dundee just were starting to fall into that kind of patch that Aberdeen were in earlier in the season, where they just couldn't get a win. They've got the win, and it was a big win. To win in a derby, that might be what they need going forward to make the case. And it just confirms how tight it is. Still any team could end up in those playoffs or relegated.
Yeah, it is insanely tight. I think just in terms of talking about Dundee United again, I think Jack Walton, who's been he's been a real presence in there for them this season. He had a day to forget. Again, the sub Adeboyega was on for 10 minutes and gets sent off. I think Will Ferry gets run for the second or third goal it was. Ryan Strain gets done for the first, and it was a long way back after the first half performance. They did rally a little bit. Obviously Glenn Middleton got that goal. Trapanovsky then scored again in the second half, but I think from minute one you could tell it was only going to go one way.
Yeah, and then I think it was a well-needed win for Tony Docherty, and I think it in a way it was coming, because there was a couple of unlucky results, I would say, but big win for him, and I think it's just made things even more interesting come the end of the season here. This is just this. It's heating up in ways that we couldn't have possibly, I guess, pictured, because towards the top, it pretty much decided who's going to win the league, and then there's a fight for top 4, and then there's a fight for that top 6, and then there's a who's going to be down at the bottom now, and I think there's 3 different kind of stories in front of us here, so it will be interesting to see where it all goes. With regards to the other results, is there any real talking points? I think both the derby games were probably the highlights, I guess, of the weekend.
Yeah, I think a game that was a highlight for all the wrong reasons though was Motherwell against St Mirren.
I saw the clip. My friend showed me the clip when I was watching the Old Firm game yesterday. It was not a red card. I don't think that was a deserved red card at all.
Yeah. So I think if we just run through the game pretty
of course,
quickly. St Mirren started well, really bright. had a good few chances. You know, former St Mirren goalie Ellery Balcom was tested a couple of times. Had a lot of corners. Boyd Munce then opens the scoring. His deflected strike from outside the box after Olasanya, you know, ran Andy Halliday ragged. Cuts it back to Boyd Munce, hits it, deflects off Stephen O'Donnell's head, who I thought looked pretty off the pace on Saturday. Obviously, he has had a bit of a long layoff with injury. Hits off his head and goes past a helpless Balcom. St Mirren then go 2-0 up 10 minutes later. An absolutely outstanding strike from Killian Phillips. I don't know how a guy of his stature moved that way. I really don't. It was an outstanding strike. Again, Balcom helpless. And then Motherwell go straight up the other end and score. Less than 90 seconds later, they score. 2-1 Callum Slattery, who I want to give a shout out to because I thought he was absolutely outstanding. Everything Motherwell did well came through him. Motherwell did score with only 2 shots on target. They had no corners. It was a one-sided display. Obviously, the result doesn't reflect that. The second half is really where it kind of now comes into question, because up at Motherwell earlier in the season, Scott Tanser had a really questionable second yellow card to get sent off. Dan Casey also got sent off in that game. But yeah, so Toyosi Olasanya is already on a booking for an off-the-ball altercation with, I think it might have been O'Donnell. So he's already on a booking, but he runs to get the ball. He then turns and bumps into Dan Casey. Literally, it's just a collision. Dan Casey goes down holding his face as if he'd been shot. Yellow card, red card, off you pop. And you're stood and you're like, nobody in the ground expected it.
That's the thing. You obviously saw it in the flesh. I saw it in a clip, and I was just left with my mouth kind of like open, just going, how on earth could that? Surely, again, that's when VAR has to be used.
So VAR can't be used because it's a second yellow card, so we can't even go and appeal that.
I think that's another problem with VAR then.
Yeah,
because
so
it was very clear and obvious that it was not deliberate, and it was also it made a meal of it. Really.
How many types of those collisions happen all over the park in 90 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
So that happened, and then I think 5 minutes later, Caelan Boyd Munce goes in for a challenge. He's knocked out cold. He is knocked out cold. I'm glad to hear that he is okay, because it was not nice to see he was being stretchered off. But the referee then gives a foul to Motherwell, and you're like, he's out cold here. But I'm not just saying this as a St Mirren fan. I thought the ref was poor all round. I thought there was a couple of times we rode our luck in terms of some decisions that went against Motherwell. But I think it is now creeping more and more into the game that fans, managers, clubs are being disgruntled with VAR. And I really do think the SFA need to have a rethink at the end of the season, because it can't keep going the way it's going. Because if it does, it could really, really damage Scottish football.
I completely agree. With regards to the other results, not really much to talk about in terms of, I guess, the fight. You've got that fight between Dundee United, Aberdeen and Hibs for that top 4. Dundee United, a bit of a blow for them, and Hearts are now right behind them.
Up. Yep.
Good win for them against Ross County.
Especially with Ross County on their form, I think that was a fantastic result.
They've got a good away record, Ross County, so a good result for Neil Critchley's men, and they've kind of put themselves into that talking point now of getting into the top 4. And you just think that we've talked about it so much, but the story of the Edinburgh teams somehow potentially getting into the top 4 towards the end of this season, considering where they were at the start of the season, is I think one of the biggest stories of this league season. And it was Aberdeen for a while, and the run they went on, and then the run at the start, then the run in the middle part of the season. But I think the two Edinburgh teams somehow getting themselves back into European places is just crazy.
Yeah, I think Critchley and David Gray both deserve a lot of credit. I think David Gray obviously came under the cosh a lot at the start of the season. I think he was one loss away from getting the bullet. But no, I think if you'd have said to both sets of fans at the start of the season, you could end up in the top 4, they would have bit in your hand off, because they were dead and buried at
Absolutely.
one point.
I mean, we actually had one of our university colleagues actually said, I think after 10 games, he said to us, I'm pretty sure the words were, we were going to get relegated this season, and that was talking about Hibs.
Yeah.
So it's very good to see. There should be a strong, Edinburgh derby, or the two teams. They should be strong in Scotland, so it is good to see in a way.
I
Okay.
think the most, I think St Johnstone Aberdeen, just quickly to touch on it,
Yeah.
I think that's a bet that's a shoe-in at the start of the season, is 0-0. It always
It
ends 0-0.
had the hallmarks of a 0-0, didn't it?
Always ends 0-0, that fixture.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously didn't really do much help for both sets of teams. It was just kind of I think St Johnstone, by the sounds of it, were unlucky with the chances that they had.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that was a kind of nothing game by all accounts.
Yeah. Well, we move on to, I'm obviously working on a story for the Championship, a TV package. Championship, big weekend for Falkirk.
Massive, absolutely
Big
massive. They really capitalised on other results. Obviously, Ayr United beat 2-0 at Partick, and then Livingston drawn 3-3 with Airdrie. Falkirk just absolutely swept the floor of Queen's Park. You know, a 4-0 win, clean sheet, away from home. I don't know if I want to say it yet, because I know the way the Championship can be, but I think we spoke on the last show about the team that can be the most consistent, and right now I cannot see past Falkirk.
I will say, Falkirk have not beat Livingston this season, and they still have to play them. Ayr, I think, now find themselves in a situation, Scott Brown and his men find themselves in a situation that they need a response this weekend. And if there isn't a response, if there isn't a 3 points won, I think you could be looking at Falkirk being that automatic team to go up. Massive weekend for Falkirk in terms of that title race. And also, I just want to give a quick shout out. There's been a lot of criticism thrown at Partick Thistle. Partick Thistle are still in a playoff place, and the way that the season's going, some of the teams look like they're running out of gas a wee bit towards the end of this season, and Partick could still get into the playoff place.
Yeah, I think it happens season on season. I think Partick and Ayr are very similar in that regard, that they start really well and then fall off, or they don't start well and then they come into a season. I think now we're seeing the Partick that we all know is there, you know, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. They've been through the playoff system before. Obviously, we always go back to that playoff against Ross County, which is still incredible. But yeah, I think they're really starting to find a bit of form now. I think Brian Graham and his coaching staff are doing an incredible job. You know, a player manager is a tough ask for anyone. Never mind for a guy who's still the manager of the women's team, in the frame for the Scotland women's job as well, and apparently he's a referee as well. So, you know,
does it all.
I don't know what his wife maybe says about this, because I don't think he'll ever be in the house.
Aye.
But yeah, you know, kudos to Partick Thistle. A very damaging result for Ayr United, I think.
Aye.
And then obviously the Fife derby on the Friday night, Raith Rovers and Dunfermline. Really good result for Raith Rovers.
Yeah, I would say, with regards to that 3-horse race that we've talked about, I think this weekend was, like we said, it was massive for Falkirk, but I still think there'll be a few twists to this tale yet. I think 7 games left to go. So really, they still have to play each of the teams, so that will be interesting to see what happens, because if that's where the twists could happen.
Yeah, it's heating up for sure.
So yeah. But lastly, on the Championship, and it's the story that emerged yesterday with Callum Davidson. I think doing a pretty good job at Queen's Park. I rate Callum Davidson as a manager. You know, he got a fantastic win at Ibrox in the Scottish Cup. I think there's something strange behind this sacking. I don't think that this is necessarily anything to do with form or something. Even the wording of the article when it was released would indicate to me that something else has happened that has led to that sacking.
Yeah, I think it's very harsh, you know, considering it's 3 weeks after they beat Rangers, 4 weeks after they beat Rangers. It is harsh. Unless, you know, Queen's Park have maybe got somebody in line waiting that they maybe think can take the club forward.
But you just think
to
with
the
7
next
games
level.
left to play?
And Yeah, it is a strange one. It's a strange one. I
'Cause
guess we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, no. So I think pretty harsh, to be honest with you. And then lastly, Simon Murray had a vape thrown at him during the Dundee derby. There was Celtic fans throwing stuff at the Rangers players at the end of the Old Firm game when the Rangers fans were celebrating in front of their fans. And we'll go on to talk about it, but this seems to be becoming even more prevalent than it used to be, and I think it's a big issue. You know, we talk about it. Our big debate today will be on the alcohol ban maybe being lifted, but I don't think that will help that situation. I don't know what your thoughts are on it. Simon Murray was very vocal afterwards, but he was also quite almost like understanding.
Yeah,
Like he expected it. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's tricky. I mean, I was obviously at Fir Park at the weekend, and the blocky boys that they like to call themselves had a still game tifo, and it basically just said, 2 pints, something.
The still game reference. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, but in terms of things being thrown, I don't know what you can do to stop that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. It shouldn't happen. There's no place for it in football, but I don't actually know what can you do to stop that happening.
Well, at the weekend, yesterday, the police invoked, I think it was Article 50 of the stop and search of the fans going into Celtic Park. Obviously didn't work. This is what I'm saying. Like, how can you honestly check 60,000 people?
But even at that, you're not allowed to search under 16s. You are less likely to search a woman because most of the stewards are men and they don't employ enough female stewards. So realistically, if you want to get something into a game, you can get it into a game.
Yeah.
And that's through no fault of the police. It's through no fault of the stewards. It's just the way it's been. And it is all down to the people who attend games to just actually be like, hang on a minute, this isn't right. Would you throw something at someone in the street?
No,
Just as they walk by? Probably not.
It's an odd comparison, right? You're gonna laugh, right? But have you ever had a bird poo on you?
Yes.
Right. See, when it falls from quite high, it feels like you've been hit by a stone.
Yeah.
So imagine throwing something from a distance and it hitting a player. It's going to have more of an effect than if you were right up in front of them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's something that doesn't belong in football, like you said. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. But the Scottish football preview, Lauren, do you want to take us away on that?
Okay, so I think if we're going to go off best result, I think we need to give it to Rangers. I think in terms of off the back of that result against Fenerbahce, to keep the momentum going, to stop Celtic being on that 5 unbeaten run at Parkhead in the Old Firm. Barry Ferguson's first Old Firm game as a manager. I think I would struggle to look past that. I do want to give an honourable mention to Dundee.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because that is a massive result for them in terms of safety and just in terms of the run of form they've been on. I think just because Dundee United have hit a bit of a purple patch, I'm going to give it to Rangers.
Yeah, I would give it to Rangers too. I think, there's been a lot of jokes made about Barry Ferguson and his coaching staff coming in, but thoroughly deserved the win. And he's honestly put himself in the discussions for that, getting it full time. He is an interim right now, but I think people just have that assumption that it's interim, as if like at the end of the season they're going to move on. But listen, he's getting wins, he's racking up. I mean, obviously the poor result against Motherwell, but you can't really complain with wins, and there seems to be a different mentality with the players right now. They played like Barry Ferguson would play, aggressive. They were on the front foot, and fair play and credit where credit is due. But yeah, definitely a wee bit of a shout out to Dundee too. They needed that.
Howler of the weekend. Okay, so I'm going to give an honourable mention again to the referee, Grant Irvin. And that's all I'm going to say on that because I'll go off on a tangent. But in terms of the actual howler of the weekend, I was going to give it to Jack Walton, the Dundee United goalkeeper, for Lyle Cameron's disallowed goal. He parries the ball straight back into his path and Cameron finishes it. And then for Scott Tiffany's goal, it's straight at him, he fumbles it, and it's in the back of the net. But I think Dundee United defence as a whole was very questionable. Already mentioned Adegboyega getting sent off after 10 minutes of being on the pitch. Will Ferry, Ryan Strain, I think they all kind of had a day to forget. So I think we'll just give it to the Dundee
The
United backline.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you too. I watched the highlights on the way into university this morning, and like you said, a game to forget, I think, for Jim Goodwin and his men.
Definitely.
Player of the weekend?
Player of the weekend, I'm going to give it to a man I really have a soft spot for. Ex-St Mirren captain Joe Shaughnessy. I think he's really revitalised that Dundee team. You know, he's the club captain. I think Tony Docherty made a big deal of him coming back in. I think in an interview he simply said, "I'm so glad to have my captain back." And I think that speaks volumes. He's returned from an ACL injury that kept him out for well over a year a few weeks ago, and he has ignited their survival bid. Just a couple of stats I want to throw at you, and just to get your initial reaction. So, in Shaughnessy's last 2 seasons with Dundee, so last season and this season, when he plays, they have won 15 games. 14 games. No, 15 games, and they have won 14 when he is not playing.
Okay.
They keep less clean sheets. When he plays, 14 clean sheets. When he doesn't play,
There you go then.
4.
That's a big impact.
Yeah, 4 clean sheets. So that's a 10 difference. And they have conceded 78 goals when he doesn't play, down to 67 when he does.
There you go. Well, that's a clear indication of an impact that he has.
Yeah.
Shown that kind of experience as well. So yeah, player of the weekend to him.
Yeah, definitely. Goal of the weekend, there was a few contenders. Killian Phillips against Motherwell, as I've already highlighted. Glenn Middleton against Dundee. But I think I'm going to give it to Igaman against Celtic. I think it made it 3-2. It was a piece of individual brilliance. I think it really showed what he is as a striker. Nipping by people and then firing it into the goal. And as you've said before, against the run of play, it takes a lot to dig that out.
The occasion against the run of play, individual brilliance, like you said, he's been called into question in recent games. He obviously didn't start the game, but he is a player that has the ability to just pull something out of nowhere, and I think that's what Rangers have been lacking the last couple of years. So yep, definitely Igamane for me was the goal of the weekend, because just what it really meant, everything that surrounded it, for sure.
Definitely.
So obviously we are now moving on to Scotland. Scotland are back, international weekend. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so we've got the UEFA Nations League playoff tie against Greece. We've obviously got the first leg in Athens on Thursday, and then the return leg at Hampden on Sunday. It's a massive game for Scotland. I think there's been a few additions to the squad that we can talk about. Lennon Miller and James Wilson, 2 of the brightest, youngest talents in Scotland, being called up to the squad. Return of Kieran Tierney, Lewis Ferguson. You've obviously got Max Johnson, who's at Sturm Graz as well. I think it's a really exciting squad. Although I do think if you'd said to me in 2025 that we would still have Grant Hanley and Kenny McLean in the Scotland squad, I think I would laugh. I would have laughed at you, but do you know what? They perform for Scotland.
It could be worse. It could be Jordan Henderson getting called up for England.
Yeah, that is also very true. I was so shocked at that.
I don't know where that's came from. But yeah, no, I agree. I think James Wilson and Lennon Miller deserved chance to show what they can do on the senior level for the Scotland team. There is precocious talent out there in Scotland that I think, it used to be back in the day. It was just, Celtic. It was basically made up of Celtic and Rangers players. So it is good to see these other players getting an opportunity. I feel like I haven't watched Scotland in ages.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you talk about the traditional Celtic Rangers. There is only 3 Old Firm players in the squad. So Liam Kelly, John Souttarn and Anthony Ralston, who somehow still makes it, but that's due to the injuries to Aaron Hickey. That he's still there. One person I do want to touch on though is George Hurst, a late call up to the squad. He obviously got his international clearance through earlier in the week. He's 26 years old. He's a towering figure. He's 6'3". So kind of Lyndon Dykes-esque, I think, if you would say that. He's got 11 goals and 49 appearances for Ipswich. He's not a goal threat, but I think what he does give you is energy, and he will press the living daylights out of any defence. He has been hindered with injuries at the start of the season, which has kind of limited his game time. He scored against Nottingham Forest at the weekend though. I think he just adds depth, which Scotland need there. But yeah, he's already an England under-20 international as well. But qualifies through his granddad. and he is the son of David Hurst, which I didn't realise.
There you go.
The former Sheffield United player and England international, who scored 106 goals in 294 appearances for
Not
Sheffield.
bad.
So,
Do you
he's got a
think-
bit of pedigree about him, so I'm excited.
Yeah. Do you think Bobby Wales deserved some sort of call up maybe?
Oh, that's a good one.
I like us
I
giving
like-
strikers a chance because we've been lacking
Yeah.
a kind of centre forward, that kind of target man, for a long time at Scotland. Our strikers seem to be a kind of different type of striker. Like Lyndon Dykes is just a nuisance. Che Adams is a wee bit more of a playmaker. There hasn't been like a centre forward target man.
Yeah.
Shankland's had his opportunities, but just can't seem to kind of get the ball rolling in a Scotland shirt, really.
Yeah, so obviously Nisbet's back in the squad.
Yeah,
He's
Nisbet too,
on
yeah.
a good run of form at Aberdeen. But in terms of Bobby Wales, I think it would have been a toss-up between him and James Wilson. I think Steve Clarke would have had a tough decision on his hands. I think Bobby Wales probably gives you more of a physical presence, whereas James Wilson gives you more of that raw, just really enthusiastic young player. So I think he's probably looking at the likes of Che Adams, Kevin Nisbet, who are maybe not the tallest, but they are big guys in terms of physical presences. So I think they probably just wanted to do something a bit different.
Yeah.
That's why he's maybe handed the call up to James Wilson. But would I be shocked to see Bobby Wales in near future squads? No, I
Absolutely.
wouldn't. If he
Yeah.
continues on the trajectory that he's on at Kilmarnock, I wouldn't say no.
So I think it's quite obvious to say that's probably our game of the weekend. As as Scotland fans, as people who are from Scotland, that's the game of our weekend. So we'll see what happens there. I do want to give a shout out to two big games though. I think in the Championship, I think this is a big weekend for Ayr United. If Ayr United still want to be within that discussion, I think they have to win this weekend against Hamilton. But I also, we shout out to Thistle and Wraith. Thistle have got a bit of momentum right now. With regards to that playoff, those playoff games, if they've got momentum on their side, you never know. So I think those are two games at least to mention, but for sure Scotland game is the one that's probably on everybody's minds. I want to give a quick shout out to the Carabao Cup Final. Obviously we are Scotland fans, we're fans of the Scottish League, but I have a real soft spot for Newcastle United. I believe that they're a team that deserved that win. Just want to throw a couple of stats at you. They've won their first domestic cup since 1955, and their first major silverware cup since 1969.
Yeah, it's an incredible achievement. I think going into the game, you could tell what it meant to the whole city, the fans, the players, just everything about them. I think it was built up to be, this is it, this is going to break our Wembley curse. I think just when they panned to the stands, you obviously had Ant and Deck, Alan Shearer, the raw emotion of, little kids to 70-year-old, 80-year-old guys who have never seen their team win a trophy, or they have done just a long time ago. I thought they were absolutely relentless, and the passion that came from Bruno Guimaraes' interview at the end. He's from Brazil. He grew up in Brazil. He came over to the Premier League not speaking a word of English, and the emotion that came through in his interview was, it really grabbed me. He was like, I want to be, when I leave this club, I want them to be singing my name the way they sing Shearer's. He's like, this is my second home. His two boys were born in Newcastle. And I think it just shows the passion of the club as a whole. Newcastle always have an amazing reputation for their fan base. St James's Park is always rocking.
Yeah.
And a little shout out to Dan Byrne, local boy. Scores at Wembley.
Amazing.
You can't write it.
No, you can't. And what a moment it was for him. But you are right. There's something about the Magpie fan base that you want them to do well.
Yeah.
You're willing them to do well. They got bought over recently by, money that comes from a place that I'm not sure about in football. Yet somehow I felt like they merited it. Out of all the teams in that league, I thought they deserved this after years of problems with ownership and the fans, sticking by their team through all of it. I thoroughly deserved, and I feel there was a part of me that was genuinely happy for Newcastle.
I don't think I've ever been so happy for a team that I don't support.
Yeah, no.
But no, I think in terms of the money, just quickly, I think they're going about it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
They are not spending like your Chelseas, your Man Cities, your PSGs. They are growing their club from the ground up, and it's really refreshing.
Yeah, so absolutely fantastic for Newcastle. So congratulations to Newcastle. And that's the first cup of the English domestic run taken by Newcastle, staying in the north. Okay, the big debate is obviously on the potential lifting of drinking in the stadiums. It's been banned since the 1980s Scottish Cup Final between Celtic and Rangers, where there was trouble on the Hampden pitch. Obviously, you spoke about Motherwell's sign at the weekend. The feeling amongst most fans is they want it back. I kind of flip flop with it. Sometimes I think there is a place for it. I really do think there is, especially for Lowland League and like kind of League 2, League 1 clubs. I think it would be really good for them from, you know, a financial point of view, being able to bring that kind of extra revenue in. What do you think about it, Lauren?
So, in terms of lower league, at junior games, it's allowed.
Yeah.
It's allowed at junior games, and I've been to many, and there's never been any trouble involving alcohol. I don't know whether that's just because it's always been tradition. So they know how to market it. They know how to. I mean, I would say they know how to behave, but that sounds like I'm a teacher. But in terms of bigger league, like in terms of the more top leagues, I just don't think. I don't think it would bring any benefit other than finances. I mean, if we were talking this morning on the way up to uni, the Rangers fans having to be in the ground at 10 o'clock, the Green Brigade having to be, you know, kind of...
They were herded
like cows, yeah. At 10 o'clock in the morning when the game kicks off at 12:30. I think if you're that worried about crowd trouble without even alcohol in the stadium, then what chance have you got?
I think the argument from most football fans is there already is alcohol in the stadium, that people still are getting it in anyway. So, but then my argument to that would be, what if there's no restrictions at all? Yeah. That to me, I mean, there's talk about it being a lower percentage of alcohol. There's limiting how much they can have, but I just don't know how you can enforce that, really.
But then that's another debate, isn't it? It's like, oh, you're not selling real alcohol.
No,
and then
I know.
You're like, well, you asked for it, you've got it, and now you're complaining.
Like I said, I think there's a place for it. I just, I think, unfortunately, as a fan of one of the top two, of the two Glasgow clubs, I can confidently tell you that the problem lies with those two clubs. They're the ones that are the most likely to cause trouble, just because it's the most charged atmosphere in the entire league. And I was saying to my friends, in a way, the only real way for this to work, in my opinion, is if the Glasgow clubs are exempt from it. But that's xenophobic. You can't do that. You can't go, all of you can have drinking back in the stadium, but not you two, because that will just cause even more trouble. So I think there is a place for it. And you obviously saw with Motherwell's sign, they very much are of the opinion that they want it back. Some people were telling me the other day, Aidan, this is a game that took place over 40 years ago. And my argument to that, you know, and they were saying, why should we be punished for the actions of people 40 years ago? I think people would still behave the same way. I don't think anything's changed.
I think potentially it could be worse.
Exactly, yeah. Especially when you talk about the fact that Celtic and Rangers, as of recent, haven't had fans, opposite fans, away fans in their stadiums. So it's kind of...
There's already a risk there. So
there's
why
already
escalate
tension.
it?
Do you know what I mean? So if you add it onto that... So, listen, I think there is pros and cons to it. I think the pros are the financial benefits, but I think the cons are trouble. Potentially still trouble. So, yeah, no, that would be... I guess our big debate for today, you know, write in what you think of it if you have any thoughts on that. But I think we'll just tie everything up, won't we, Lauren?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, we'll see you in a fortnight's time, but that's been all from us on this edition of the Tartan Touchline. Please do write in with feedback, suggestions, or anything you would like us to cover. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter. You can even write to us on the tartantouchline@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. I've been Aidan Gilbride.
And I've been Lauren McCulloch.
Catch you next time.